with it uploaded, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be up before the second episode airs. So before I continue this video, I want to say that this video will contain spoilers from the Fire Force manga. There will be characters features in this video that have yet to show up in the anime and will not show up in the second season of Fire Force if my calculations are correct for where their season is ending. Enough with the intro though, let's get straight into the video. Before I go into who are each of the pillars, first I want to explain what exactly are the pillars. The pillar is an individual that possesses the primordial flame. The primordial flame is the original flame that hails from the world of Adola, the Adola Burst. With the Great Origin Flame, these individuals can do amazing things. There are a total of 8 pillars, all being gathered to recreate the monstrosity that is the great disaster that happened 250 years ago. With that being said, let's talk about the actual pillars. The first pillar to be born is Hito Hashira Me, or Amaterasu. I think that the translation for her name is quite shaky, because I believe at the beginning of Fire Force that her name was Hito Hashira, but it later on got changed in the official to Amaterasu. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to be calling her Amaterasu. There is not much we know about Amaterasu, however she has been pretty prevalent in the story. We understand that she was used as a sacrifice to power the Amaterasu power plant, and the Amaterasu power plant powers all of Tokyo. In terms of where she came from, all we know is that she was captured by Yona and given to St. Raffles. By using Amaterasu, Raffles made the Amaterasu power plant. As of recently, a big reveal was just unveiled behind the mystery of Amaterasu. We learned that Amaterasu is the doppelganger of Iris from the world of Adola, and coincidentally making Iris a pillar as well. Amaterasu, I feel, had the most impact during her time at the Company 4 arc. Saying this, the powers or abilities of Amaterasu. As I have said previously, there has not been much information on her, but the ability that we know of her thus far has to be mind control. Using her Adola link, she is able to get inside the mind of Shinra, and by doing so, she was able to manipulate and control him into acting crazy and attacking his comrades. She can also sense when new Adola Burst users are going to be born, but other than that, there isn't really much we know about her power, and there are things that still have to be revealed about her past, disaster, and separation of Shinra's family. Other than that hint of knowledge, her backstory does not exist. Amir is the second pillar and is essentially the leader of all the pillars. She is the one who gathers all of them together and orders them to gather more pillars. Being an awakened third generation, Hamia has an initial ability of electric shock. Using the electricity that emanates from her body, she is able to disrupt electronic equipment and manipulate individuals. She is able to control someone through electricity by controlling the person's endorphins and neurotransmitters. Using the electricity, she is able to communicate long distance to people using her technique called Radiohead. There is only one weakness her powers have, where everything can be negated, and that is against plasma. The only person in the story who to wield plasma is Arthur. When Hamia was first introduced after mind controlling Sho, she attempted to mind control Arthur. It was a failed attempt in which you thought that Arthur was too stupid to be mind controlled. In actuality, it was his plasma sword that stopped her electromagnetic waves from reaching Arthur's brain. But who knows, even without that plasma sword, would Arthur really be able to be mind controlled? To move on to the next pillar, we have the third pillar, Sho Kusakibe. Abducted and trained by Hamia and the Evangelist at the age of an infant, Sho is the commander of the Knights of the Ashen Flame and younger brother to Shinra Kusakibe. Sho awakened his Adola Burst as a baby, alerting for the Evangelist to make a move towards Sho. Coincidentally, when Sho had awakened his powers, this forced Shinra to awaken his own powers as well. Their house burned down and the boy's mother turned into an inferno. Escaping the fire, the mother brung Sho directly to the Evangelist. Sho grew up his entire life not knowing of his mother nor his brother. Believing that the Evangelist was his parent, it was not until the Vulcan arc, over 13 years later from the initial awakening process, when Sho finally met Shinra. Then it wasn't until the Nether arc, when the two brothers finally met and were able to throw down, and Shinra awakened Sho's memory to show that he was his brother. Now currently released from his mind control, Sho is trying to group up with Shinra and Company 8 to help take down the Evangelist. As for the strength of Sho, he carries around a katana, making him a skilled swordsman. When it comes to Sho's initial ability, using his link with the Evangelist, Sho is able to use an ability called Severed Universe. Using Severed Universe, he is able to slow down the flow of time, giving the illusion that he is jumping around from point to point. Severed Universe requires cooling for the surrounding area to such a low degree that slows down the heat that causes the natural expansion of the universe. This causes everything to move slower, with Sho being the anomaly or the odd man out. Because Sho is exposing his body to such low temperatures, Severed Universe can only be used for a limited amount of time, till Sho has to return back to the normal flow of time. This is why you see steam emitting from Sho after he uses Severed Universe. His body is cooling down or melting the ice and cold around him. Besides this small limitation of his power, which isn't really that small, but he has an even larger limitation. And the large limitation is, in which I also glossed over it just a bit earlier, and that is Sho has to have an Adola link with the Evangelist in order to be able to use Sever Universe. Now for our next pillar, it is our main character. The fourth pillar, Shinra Kusakibe. I explained with Sho how he got his power, so I think that is pretty self-explanatory now, so I don't want to repeat myself on that. However, the result of Shinra's family's death, an awkward nervous tick of smiling, it subjected him to a lot of bullying throughout his life, earning him the nickname the Devil. As for Shinra's ability, Shinra is a third generation user who ignites flames from his feet. During the midst of training with Benimaru, Shinra was taught a different application for his power. He was taught two hand signs. The first hand sign is the Toro Hishigi hand sign. This hand sign is made by placing the thumb across the palm of the hand and then touching the joint of the thumb with the index finger. This allows the flow of energy within his body to flow into one singular point, allowing for him to increase the speed and power of his body's attack. The second hand sign is Korna. He developed this from seeing Captain Obi use his hand sign very often. So while developing a new application for his ability, he tried the rock on symbol. This lets Shinra create a large explosion from the bottom of his feet. He used this in his attack called Hellfire. And now to get to the last and most powerful part of Shinra is his ability to time travel. Through the Adola link, Shinra is able to access his Adola flame. Using his Adola flame, he is able to increase his speed to the point of light speed. Unlike his brother, he can move a lot faster than light speed. When Shinra's body begins to touch the speed of light, his body begins to separate. He splits into particles and those particles carry him beyond light speed. While broken into particles, the particles go at such a high speed, going back in time and rematerializing Shinra's body back to the previous state before light speed. Alright, now we are on the true best girl of Fire Force. Not Maki, not Hibana, not Iris, not Lisa. Fuck no, not Tamaki. The real best girl of Fire Force is the fifth pillar, Inca Kasugatani. She is the crazy, wacky, thrill-seeking person of the Evangelist and the Pillars, almost to the point where she is pushing that end of masochism. However, she wasn't always like this. 2 years ago, before the present timeline of Fire Force, Inca was a part of a disaster called the Great Fire. Inca lived her whole life with no interest or purpose. So depressed and confused on her meaning of life, she often wondered would she be better off dead turning into one of the Infernos. During the Great Fire, with death surrounding her from every angle and heat scorching her at every side, it was the first time ever in her life that she thought, I want to live. Feeling embraced by the flames around her, she felt the thrill and adrenaline coursing through her veins. She finally figured out her purpose in life. She must put herself in as many dangerous situations because it makes her feel the most alive. Coincidentally, while she found her new purpose for life, her third generation abilities had awakened. To speak on Inca's powers and abilities, even though she is a third generation pyrokinetic, she is the only one in the series who cannot produce her own flames. She was a newly discovered fourth generation, and yes, I understand that all Adola Burst users are fourth generations. She is very different than everyone else. As you all most likely know, the abilities of second generation users are their ability to control flames but not create, whereas third generations are able to conjure flames but only control their own. However, Inca can do none of that. Inca's ability is a lot more rare and a lot more special. Inca is the only character in the series who can predict fires. As I said, she developed this during the Great Fire. She suddenly felt what I would say is her spidey sense activating, telling her to move out of the way. She focused on the sixth sense that she had got and was able to see lines of fire that were being predicted to appear in a linear direction. Moving out of the way of the sixth sense line, she dodged the oncoming fire. Quickly getting used to sensing the fire, she learned that where the lines of light get stronger and thicker, that is where it will ignite. Taking this power into the present timeline, before joining the Evangelist, Inca was a fire thief. She would predict future fires, show up to the person's home, save them, but however, saving them cost a price. The next pillar we have up is our sixth pillar, Nataku. Our first glimpse at Nataku happened during the early stages of Fire Force back during the Company 1 arc. Areka had been doing experiments on many people, including children. During the arc, he had manipulated Tamaki into finding people to experiment on. Gathering them all together, Nataku was one of the experimentees. Forcing the Adola bug onto a Nataku, Areka caused a huge reaction to happen within Nataku. Unlike the ones who went previously before Nataku, after accepting the Adola bug, he had taken in the power and was reborn with third generation abilities. Fast forward through the timeline of Fire Force, the story completely forgets about Nataku, me as well. He suddenly then appears later on during the Hajime Industries arc. In Hajime Industries, he basically becomes a lab rat to the scientists trying to figure out some way to unlock his power. During this arc, he awakens at the sixth pillar. Being a sixth pillar, he has strong abilities. However, he struggles to control his power out of fear. Nataku is able to manifest radioactive symbols out of fire, which allows him to shoot fire beams. And also, an extra add-on to his fire ability and power is that these flames are not just good looking in terms of the radioactive symbols, but they're actually radioactive fires. Second to last, we have our seventh pillar, Sister Samira. Sister Samira is one of the masterminds behind the lore of Fire Force. We first learned about her during Iris and Hibana's backstory. She lived in the Covenant with all the little nun children. Suddenly, one day, a fire broke out and killed every member of the church, the only surviving members being Iris and Hibana. Later on in the story, we find out that Sister Samira was the reason for that fire starting, and that the church that Iris and Hibana lived in their entire life was a breeding ground for pillars and infernos. Hibana, discovering the secret, she ran to Sister Samira, releasing a lot of information that she was the one that killed everyone in the church, and she has been making pillars for over 200 years, since the first great catalysm. Samira has one of the most interesting and fascinating initiation abilities in the entire series. A quick cut and dry explanation of her ability: she is able to make earthquakes. But of course, let me explain a little bit more on how this is done. The body has natural functions. One of those functions is shivering. Using the friction and little bursts of heat the muscles emit from shivering, she is able to amplify that small amount of heat and turn it into kinetic energy, causing for bigger vibrations, making earthquakes. The last pillar on the list is a pillar we have seen since the beginning of the show. Our eighth pillar is Iris. Because I've already mentioned it during Sister Samira's explanation, I don't think I need to go into the backstory of Iris, so I'll just leave that there. During the Obi Rescue arc, it was an all-out battle between Company 8 and the White Clad. Up against a new opponent named Dragon, he let out a ferocious roar that had decimated everything in his path. Being in the path of the blast, Company 8 was supposedly destroyed. However, they were saved by the grace of the Evangelist, watching over the newly born pillar. That newly born pillar turned out to be Iris. Later on, more information is revealed, and we find that Iris has gained third generation abilities. She is still a novice at it, but she will eventually grow and learn to use them. But as of right, that's it for all of the pillars. I didn't want to go too in depth on everything. I felt that would be over explanation, especially just going in depth about every little detail of what they did within each arc. But I hope you have enjoyed this explanation of every pillar. The next fire, please comment down below, and hopefully I can think of some on my own. But I hope you all have enjoyed this video. Thank you all for watching, and like, comment, and subscribe for more Fire Force. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.